Last year when I came on, I just did 2. I was a kind of guest director. Came and had a really, really good time, and they liked the shows that I did. And then when they were looking for this year, they said, you want to come back again? I said, yeah, I love it. Do you want to do, you want to be lead director is what they call it. Yeah. I said, yeah. So you do 4. You do the opening 2, and you do the closing 2. So you open it and close the show. I said, but we'd like you to do some writing as well. Yeah, sure, I'll write some episodes. And then we'd like you to be a kind of co-exec producer. So that means you have a responsibility just to keep an eye on the whole season. Yeah. Just to talk to the writers and be in the room with everybody, say, okay, if we do this in this episode, you do that in that episode, it doesn't join up. Yeah. So it's more about just having an overview of it. I don't really go into it. Well, they'll probably tell you I do. I don't go to a room and say, I'm not doing this and I don't want that. You try and be a little bit more collaborative because ultimately it's not one person. It is,
collaboration.
Yeah, and it's not my show. I came in as a guest into season 3. Yeah. And now that was a good time. Now we're doing season 4 and we'll hopefully keep going.
Well, let's talk about season 3 then.
Yeah.
What can you tease of what's coming up in terms of season? What's in storylines?
We wanted to push the whole thing a little bit further this year. With the experience of doing the previous seasons, you kind of know what you can do. You know what works. You know what the audience love, and we know what we like to do. So the core of the whole thing is a relationship between Scott and Stonebridge. So you preserve that everything. We look at their journeys, the things they learn about themselves, doing that. So that's the kind of the ongoing, the bromance as we call it. But the plot that we decided to come out this year, we have a full-time researcher working on Strike Back, right? And her name's Annie, and she basically gives us the real geopolitical situations in the world. And coming off last season, we said, what's going on now? She said, well, the big problem right now is the drug trafficking, which is generating money for the terrorists. Yeah. And this is real-world politics. So in Colombia, you have countries like Iran and Iraq and Afghanistan that are very poor but generate a lot of drugs money. Yeah. It kind of gets all filtered and cleaned and then goes back to pay for terrorism. So the idea was that if we can interrupt that flow of cash, our heroes can stop that. They can stop terrorism, which is Section 20's brief, basically. So I thought, okay, let's start there. Let's go to Colombia to start with. Let's try and interrupt a drug deal and see what happens if we kind of rattle that cage. And they come across a guy who they think is their target, who turns out to be something that they're not really expecting, and he's a principal part of the season. And I can't tell you any more than that, man, because I can't. That would be like a huge spoiler. But so this is a guy who becomes part of their team, but because he comes from a different world and has a different agenda, it's constantly changing amongst them. We also bring in some new characters. Bring in Milana Jackson, who's a DEA agent, because we've started with in the world of drugs, and she kind of joins Section 20 and she thinks she's doing the right thing with them, and then she sees that their methods are perhaps a little harsher and a little bit more direct than anybody would expect. She thinks that's great to start with, and by the end of the season, she's questioning whether that's the right thing. We bring in Robson Green, who's in the UK, is a huge TV star in the UK. You guys may not know him so much in the US, but he's been around for a long time. And I wanted a new kind of authority figure in the crib to run alongside Dalton, Rona's character. So Robson comes in and he shakes the boys up a little bit and says, you got to step up. This is this, So everything about the season is pushing it a little bit further. And then we just took the action apart and we put it back together again and said, okay, this is going to be the biggest action show on television. And I'll tell you right now, I'll throw it on the gauntlet to any other TV show, right? Okay. Nothing does action like Strike Back. Nothing. Game of Thrones, Burn Notice. You may have battles with swords and dragons, but my guys are in the middle of the firefight.
There you go. Two people saving the world.
Absolutely. Well, somebody's got to do it.
Somebody's got to do it. There you go. That's a good tagline, for sure.
Yeah.
Now, what would you think? You were talking about the relationship between these two guys and how it's central to this whole thing.
Absolutely.
And how do you feel in this season that relationship differs in this season compared to all the other seasons?
I think when in the previous seasons, they were still kind of getting used to each other a little bit, Sullivan's character was brought in, and Stonebridge was a little bit concerned about where this guy came from. And last year we found out about Scott's kind of CIA assassination background, and that brought a little bit of darkness to him. This year we're kind of finding out a little bit more about his background in a kind of personal point of view. And I don't want to give anything away. And we're also questioning Stonebridge's kind of physical strength, because that's the thing about Phil Winchester when you see him. The dude is amazing at the physical stuff. He's unbreakable. All right? I thought this year I'm going to break him. And we're going to see what happens when you guy a character who is so comfortable with his own abilities. And a little bit down the season, we start saying, something's going to happen to him, which is making him question what he can do, and whether that's enough to be a soldier who can just physically do it. You've got to mentally be there as well. So we kind of give the guys individual stories, which breaks them or reveals something about them. But every time they come together on a mission, they are kind of the perfect unit. As individuals, I mean, I wouldn't want to see a show that's just about Scott, and I wouldn't want to see a show that's just about Stonebridge. But the two of them together make kind of one perfect soldier. So two broken guys, one perfect soldier. And that's kind of what I wanted to get at. And of course, the thing that they do brilliantly is they kind of have the fun in the midst of it. And when I was brought in to be this lead director, one of the things one of the broadcasters said to me, says, you're not going to make this kind of dark. I went, no, because they have fun doing what they do. And one of the reasons I like the show is because in the midst of these crazy firefights and these crazy stunts, they will have this kind of banter. But it grows out of what the real soldiers do. We talk to real soldiers, real Special Forces guys. We have a full-time military advisor, ex-Special Forces, ex-MI6. He's done things that would make your toes curl, man. And he says, yeah, in the middle of doing this, you will crack a joke. You will make some wry comment. Because if you don't do that, the darkness is out there. You know? And they deal with it. And we came from last night from premiering the first two shows with the Wounded Warriors program. So a lot of soldiers who've been injured and being served, and they're kind of messed up in the head a little bit, or they're injured and they're dealing with what they've done. They've all got amazing senses of humor, you know, and they'll deal with it. In their private moments, it's intense, but when you talk to them, they can be light about things. And that's what you want these guys to do. And, you know, we write the scripts, obviously, and we try and be as funny as we can. But when it comes down to it, in the midst of the moment, they'll go, yeah, I got a line here, I'll say something. And I go, yeah, that's good. Hey, why don't you say that? And I'll be shit in the middle of an explosion. Say this, Sully! You know, no, Phil, do that again. But I'm in the middle of a fight. No, do it again, it's great. Keep the cameras rolling, you know.
So you guys are going to see the fans in the upcoming panel, but not everyone's going to be able to make it. So what's your message for the other people who are not going to be able to see the guys, and what's your message before season 3 begins?
Dudes, you know when the tickets are on sale, buy them earlier. No, seriously. I mean, I'm sure you'll be able to stream the panels on YouTube. You'll be able to find everything anyway. But it's not being here is a damn shame, right? Because there's nothing like Comic-Con. It's not like being in a room seeing the guys, because what you'll miss is the warmth of these guys and how much humor they bring to it and how much of a good time they have. I mean, you're interviewing them. They're goofing around. That's like the show. Right, so I think that's the thing. I'm really sorry nobody's going to be able to make it because the room's only that big. But when you watch the season, you'll see a kind of refreshed, invigorated, bigger, more exciting Strike Back than it's ever been before. And we just plan to keep taking it in that direction.